Okay. And it's a long answer. The question is, describe for me how the accident happened. Jeeps, capitalized Jeeps, and that's it. This is going to be 180 lit for 5 minutes. Basically, I just pulled up to the yield sign, looked over to my left and saw that there was traffic. I remained there and then ended up getting rear-ended and it pushed me out into traffic. If I would have continued to go on, I would have ended up going off the thing. It wasn't a continuous lane. It went off in the parking lot of the mall. Right here, there's a yield sign. I believe it sits right here. I had pulled up and stopped right about here and then was looking out into traffic this way. And then that is when I was hit and then pushed out, straight out into traffic like that. This is the lane that would end up dead ending. I was sitting there behind the wheel looking in this direction. There were cars coming this way. So I proceeded to stay there. And then just as I was sitting there, stopped the car, rear-ended me, and then pushed me out into traffic. Then I kind of looked. Once I got pushed out into traffic and saw that these cars were coming, so I kind of cranked the wheel real hard and came back in here and pulled into the restaurant. The other driver followed me into the restaurant and stuff. And that's where we exchanged words. I remember my chest actually hitting the steering wheel a little bit. My face or nothing really hit the windshield or anything like that. I remember my chest hitting and then slamming back. And then the mirror flew off and hit me on the head. And then I had stuff inside the Jeep and it went all over and all that. After I made the turn to get out of the way, I slowly looked, watched in the side mirror to see where it came from because I couldn't tell, where this person was or whatever. And she was driving real slow at the time. Next, I saw her and saw the damage to the front of her car. And then I knew it was her. And I pulled slowly into the parking lot, watched her to make sure she wasn't going to take off or anything like that, so I could get the license plate or whatever. And then she saw me and saw that I pulled into the restaurant, and so she followed me into there. Basically, she got out and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was tending to my baby." And she goes, "Is there any damage to your car?" And I looked at my car. Then it didn't appear that I had any, major damage or anything like that because when she hit me, it hit my big tire. Jeeps have the big tire on the back. It hit that and just sprung me out, so that's what saved my car, from damage and stuff. Then I went over and I said, "Well, it looks like you have some damage here and stuff." And I said, "Well, since there's no real damage to my vehicle and there is to yours, do you want to just go ahead and turn that into your insurance? Or what do you want to do on that?" And she said, "Yes, I'll just go and do that." And then that was basically it. There was no major dents or anything like that. The only thing I noticed afterwards was my gas tank was going through a lot of gas and stuff. Later, I found out that there was a leak in it after the accident. Basically, my dad repaired it for me. He's pretty good at that type of thing. I noticed the damage to her car. The front end, the bumper and stuff looked like it was pushed in. The hood was folded a little bit at an angle like this. I didn't notice if the windshield or anything like that was broken or scarred or anything like that. But I just noticed basically the hood was scrunched up and the front end, and I think maybe the light might have been broken. That's all I can remember. There was no discussion of calling the police at the time, not at the time. The next day, she happened to come into the restaurant where I was working, and I had told her, I said, "Look, I think we should exchange insurance company and phone numbers and things like that." I said, "I think we both should go down and fill out a police report." And she agreed and gave me her insurance, and I gave her mine and my driver's license and her driver's license and all that. We went down to the police department because that's the city it was in and filled out a report separately. Once I got calmed down and relaxed after the accident, I got out of my Jeep and I noticed my back and my neck was hurting. So then I thought about insurance, wanting it to cover as far as, like physical injuries and stuff. I remember talking to my insurance agent, I believe that day, and she said, well, you should have got that information. That was early in the morning. And then I happened to see the other driver later and then you have 1 minute at 200 jury charge for practice, okay? Let me just explain this proceeding for you. This will be a question and answer session. The court reporter is going to take down whatever we say here today. This has the same force and the same effect as if you were testifying in a court of law. You are under oath. If you have any questions about what I'm asking you, please ask me to clarify the question. If you give me an answer, I'm going to assume that you understand what I am asking you. We have two reporters here today. One is a student reporter who is observing the proceedings. This reporter here, Mrs. Klein, is certified by the state of Texas. For the record, you need to give verbal responses because she can't take down a shake of the head and uh-huhs and uh-uhs. Those responses are not good responses, and it is confusing when you're trying to read the record. Everything that you say here today is going to be transcribed into a booklet. You'll have an opportunity to review that booklet and make any corrections. If these corrections are significant, they may be commented upon at the time of trial, whether it's law. And then you have your 200 jury charge. Proper names you have. Carl Race, Jane Race, Mrs. Race, INS, Rehab Act, Title VII. You have carpal tunnel, decision makers hyphenated. This is going to be your 200 jury charge for your mock, 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is for you to decide based upon your own knowledge and common sense to what extent, if at all, the witness's interest has affected his or her testimony. You have heard evidence that at some other time a witness has said or done something which counsel says is opposed to the witness's trial testimony. A prior inconsistent statement made by a witness who is not a party to this action is not evidence. You should review in deciding if the plaintiff has proved her case. Now, the prior inconsistency was placed before you for the sole purpose of attacking the veracity of the non-party witness. If you find that the non-party witness made an earlier statement that conflicts with his or her trial testimony, you may use that fact in deciding how much of his or her trial testimony to believe or not. On the other hand, evidence of a prior inconsistent statement by a party to this action may be considered by you both as positive evidence in deciding fault and for purposes of helping you decide if you believe the testimony of that party. In making this decision, you may consider if there was in fact an inconsistency, if the witness purposely made a false statement, or if it was a mere mistake. If the inconsistency concerns an important fact, or if it had to do with a small detail, if the witness had a reason for the breach, and whether that explanation appeals to your common sense. It is your duty, based upon all the evidence and your own good judgment, to decide how much weight to give to the inconsistency. I remind you that any notes you may have taken during the trial are just an aid to your memory. Since the notes may be wrong or incomplete, they may not be given any more weight or influence than the memory of other jurors about the facts or the conclusions to be drawn from the facts in deciding the outcome of the case. Any difference in a juror's recollection and a juror's notes should always be settled by asking to have the court reporter's transcript on that point read back to you. You must base your deciding of the facts and finally your verdict on the court record and not on any juror's notes. This lawsuit was brought by plaintiff Carl Race against defendant Jane Race, the Attorney General of this state, in her office capacity as head of the Department of Justice of this state. Mrs. Race claims that the defendant was biased against her on account of her religion and disability. Mrs. Race claims that 1, she was denied the reasonable accommodation of her disability as is required under the Rehab Act. 2, she was subjected to a hostile workplace because of her faith in violation of Title VII. And 3, she was fired by the INS because of her faith in violation of Title VII and because of her disability in violation of the Rehab Act. The defendant denies each of these claims. On each of these claims, the plaintiff must show either by direct or indirect evidence that INS and its employee have shown bias against her. Discrimination is intentional if it is done voluntarily, purposely, and willfully, and not by accident, mistake, or other innocent reason. The issue is not whether you consider the actions of the INS or any of its employees to have been right or mistaken or fair or unfair. An employer is entitled to make an employment decision for a good reason, a bad reason, or for no reason at all, so long as the decision is not driven by unlawful bias. Plaintiff argues that INS showed bias against her by failing to provide a reasonable adaptation for her disability and that this violated the Rehab Act. The Rehab Act is a federal law that was enacted to deter bias by certain employers, including the INS, toward any person with a disability solely on the basis of that disability. In order to prevail on this claim, plaintiff must show 1, that she is a person who has a disability within the meaning of the law. 2, that the INS had notice of her disability. 3, that plaintiff could perform the essential functions of her job position as an employee wage clerk, either without any adaptation or with a reasonable adaptation. And 4, that the INS refused to make reasonable adaptations. In this case, the parties agree that plaintiff is a person who has a disability under the law. Thus, you will have to decide if the plaintiff has proven the second, third, and fourth elements of her reasonable adaptation claim. I will now explain those elements of the claim to you. Now, as to the second one, a defendant is not required to provide a reasonable adaptation for a plaintiff's disability unless it is known to the defendant. If you find by preponderance of the evidence that plaintiff's carpal tunnel was not known to the decision makers at the INS during the course of plaintiff's working there, then you must find for the defendant on this claim. If you find that plaintiff's disability was known to the defendant, then the next step is to decide if she has proven by the bulk of the evidence that she was able to perform the essential functions of her job with or without an adaptation. Now, the functions of an employment position are basic core duties of a job that a person must be able to do in order to hold a certain job. Basic functions do not include marginal job duties of the job. A job function may be considered basic for any of the several reasons, including but not confined to the following. 1, the reason the position exists is to perform that function. 2, Okay, and we'll get ready for the Q&A portion. Michelle, I couldn't find the proper names. So I'm just reading that sheet, you know? Okay, Michelle. Oh, okay. That's okay. I just gave it to them from, let me make sure I'm right. Yeah. Okay, so this is going to be 1 minute practice Q&A at 2:25. Okay, 5 minutes you all want. 1 minute for practice. Did you have to sign that slip every week or did they take it out automatically once you signed it?
No, you sign that slip and they take it out continuously as long as you were with Western Freight.
Did they take out the dues for you?
Yes, sir.
During the period of time it worked, or you worked there?
Yes.
During the period of time that you had been driving a truck or involved in the trucking industry, have you ever been a dispatcher?
No, sir.
Have you ever been a supervisor?
No, sir.
In September of 1975, were you working for Western Freight Carriers?
Yes, I was.
Were you under a union benefit plan at that time?
Yes, sir.
Did you receive a copy of that plan?
Nothing except one of those little booklets.
Is this this what you received?
Yes.
This is what you received, sir.
Yes.
I believe you had an accident on that day, did you not?
I did.
Can you tell us what happened?
Well, I can try, but it happened so fast. When they dispatched me out that night, I leave after midnight every night when I run to Portland. I went up and the tractor I was going to drive was broken down. It was in the shop. They gave me another tractor numbered over by the wire. I go over there and pick it up, bring it over, and drop the other tractor out from under the trailer. Gets in this other one, backs under.
Okay, and so on your test 225, you have Mrs. Kahn, Jane Kahn, South King Avenue, James Jameson, Francis Cressman, Mawson and Black, Ford Ltd, Judy Ford's, Toyota, Diane, Dr. Gary Kraft, Plymouth, and Dr. Kraft. And this is going to be 225 Q&A for your mock, and it starts at the very beginning. Mrs. Kahn, would you state your name for the record, please?
Jane Kahn,
What is your present address, please?
78 South King Avenue.
How long have you lived there, please?
3 years.
Now, Mrs. Kahn, my name is James Jameson, and I represent the firm of Francis Cressman. We represent Mawson and Black in a lawsuit which I believe you and your husband have brought against them, resulting from an accident which occurred on April 11, 1991. Were you involved in an accident on that day?
Yes, I was.
About what time of day did it happen approximately?
About 3:30 in the afternoon.
As I ask you questions about the accident, if you don't understand my questions, please tell me and I will try to restate them so they're more clear. At the time of the accident, were you driving an automobile?
Yes.
What kind of a car was it?
It was a Ford Ltd, 82 or 83, a sedan.
How many doors do you recall?
4 doors.
Is that car registered in your name?
Yes.
Was it registered in anybody else's name?
I don't know.
For instance, your husband's name.
I don't know.
How long had you had the car? How old was the car?
I think it was about 1.5 years old.
At the time of the accident, Mrs. Kahn, you were married.
Yes.
And you are married at the present time?
Yes.
This is your husband here with us in this room, and this is your daughter, Judy.
Yes.
Do you have any other children besides Judy?
Yes. I have 2 daughters.
I understand that Judy was with you in the car when the accident happened.
Yes.
She was seated where?
In the passenger's side.
Front seat?
Front seat.
At the time of the accident, how old was your daughter, Judy?
19.
Mrs. Kahn, I noticed that you are wearing glasses now. Are those just sunglasses or prescription glasses?
They're sunglasses.
Do you wear glasses at all for reading or anything like that?
For reading.
Do you wear glasses when you drive a car?
No.
Now, at the time of the accident, besides the Ford Ltd, did you or your husband own any other cars in your family?
Yes.
What other cars?
A Ford station wagon.
What year was that approximately?
1990.
Do you know whose name that was registered in?
My husband's, I know.
Do you recall whether you were registered together with him or was it he alone?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Okay. Were there any other cars in your household at that time besides the 2 Fords?
Yes. My other daughter had a Toyota.
Was that registered in her name alone as far as you know?
No, it was probably registered in her name and my husband's.
Just to keep the record clear, the other daughter you're referring to is not Judy.
No.
Whom are you referring to?
My middle daughter, Diane.
Now, as a result of this accident on April 11 at approximately 8:30 in 1991, were you injured?
I was hurt.
You were hurt as a result of the accident.
Yes.
And right after the accident happened, let's say within an hour after the accident, did you feel any problem in terms of hurting or injury?
I don't think I felt anything.
When did you first feel that you had been hurt as a result of the accident? When was that? Was it the same day?
No, it was the next day.
What was it that hurt you or bothered you?
I started to feel stiff and pain in my back.
You felt the pain in your back and you were stiff in your back?
Yes.
What part of your back? Upper, middle, lower?
Upper.
Around the shoulders or below?
Like top of my shoulder and under my arm on my right. Like around here. And then it came around under my arm.
Right shoulder and right arm?
Under my arm.
How about the left side of your body in the back and arm areas?
No, I didn't feel pain there at that time.
Now, that next day after the accident, that was the first time you felt that you were injured or you felt any pain after the accident.
Right.
After that first day, did any other parts of your body bother you?
Only my back and my neck. By then, my neck was starting to hurt.
How soon did your neck start to bother you after the accident?
I would say about a day and a half, like the evening, next day.
The evening of the day after the accident?
Yes.
You indicated besides your neck that your back also bothered you. What portion of your back bothered you that you have just indicated?
Upper right part of my back.
Is this the same part that we just discussed?
Yes.
All right, besides that, you have told me about your neck bothering you on the evening of the day after the accident. Besides those two areas of your body and under your right arm, which I believe you already mentioned, did you or any other parts of your body bother you as a result of this accident?
No.
Did you seek medical attention the day of the accident after it happened?
No.
How about the next day after the accident? Did you seek medical treatment then?
No.
How about the second day after the accident? Did you have medical treatment then?
No.
3 days after the accident, did you have medical treatment?
No. It was 4 days.
On the fourth day after the accident, what did you do? Did you go to a hospital, a doctor, or a nurse?
No. I went to a doctor.
What doctor did you go to see? Was that Dr. Kraft?
Dr. Gary Kraft, right.
Where is he located?
In Plymouth.
And he was the physician you saw on the fourth day after this accident happened?
Yes.
Did you see any other doctors besides Dr. Kraft because of this accident?
No.
Did you go to any physical therapist as a result of this accident?
Only his physical therapist in the office.
At Dr. Kraft's office?
Yes.
Did you go to any other hospital as a result of the accident?
No.
None?
No.
When you first went to Dr. Kraft, what did he do for you that first time you saw him after the accident?
He examined me.
In what method, what manner did he examine you?
I think I sat up. I stripped to the waist and I sat up and then I laid down on.
Okay. And so that concludes your mock, you all. Hopefully you did well. Have a great day, and that's it.